Hi, you're watching NME. I'm Andrew Trendle. We're here with Foals.
Hey.
The day of the comeback. Right, here we go. First time I said it out loud. Everything Not Saved Will Be Lost, Part 1 and 2. The difficult 5th and 6th album.
Yeah, we sort of sidestepped it by just doing them at the same time.
So at what point did you realise it was going to be 2 records?
Sort of towards the end, like we didn't really have, that wasn't the goal at the outset. We just wanted to go in and like write as much music as possible and finish as much as possible. Because like before we've gone in and usually certain tracks will get left at like the 70% stage, and then we kind of learned that they never get finished, basically. So this time, definitely, I think we all felt like we wanted to make sure that we took everything and like finished everything, full lyrics, everything. So when we got to the end, we basically were sitting on this like pile of material, which was 20 tracks, basically.
It felt kind of like the fight in between the members of the band in order to edit it into the size of one album would actually just be too brutal. It made more sense as, because the tracks kind of work together. There's lots of pairings on both records and kind of little groups of tracks that are friends to each other.
It's easier to put everything out, and because like basically we just liked all of it. There wasn't any that we weren't at the end of it being like, oh, that one's a stinker. We felt genuinely that all of it was great, and also that there was a lot of diversity in it. So trying to sequence it on one record would lead to an incoherent record, and like that was one of the other goals with this period was to try and in some ways get away from what we'd done on Holy Fire and What Went Down, where we'd had this broad variety of tracks on records, but that we sacrificed maybe sometimes certain coherency. So in this time basically we sequenced 2 what we feel are like super coherent records that both stand apart but come together, and that are as good as each other. More, that's more important than anything. We didn't want part 2 to be like just the offcuts or whatever.
Yeah,
they're both as important as each other.
Well, because you've described it as 2 halves of the same locket. So what would you say it is that binds each collection together, and also what separates them?
I mean, I think they were all conceived of at the same time. So like the lyrical themes are through both records. So it's not like it's not like yin and yang or like something corny like that. It's the lyrical threads are present on both, and I think you can tell that it's a band working in the same space at the same period of time. But the difference is, I guess, in some way, if you just put it like crudely, the first record's probably more keyboard driven. It's got slightly more of a new wave kind of feel to it, and then this album 2 has got some of the heavier, more rock frenetic energy that that was probably more like on What Went Down, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, Yeah, definitely. It felt like there were certain songs that seemed like centerpieces to us, and when we've made previous records, there's been certain songs where we've kind of known, regardless of everything else, where they're going to go. So like we had Black Gold on Total Life Forever. We kind of knew that we wanted that to be in the middle of the record, and it was kind of like this sprawling, like 7-minute long song. So yeah, there were a few songs like that we felt like, so we knew what the song to end one of the records was going to be the moment we wrote it. And I guess when we were thinking of it in terms of like one record, we were like, well, that's the closer. And we had ideas about which songs could open it, and it's kind of nice because it means that all these sort of centerpiece moments get to have their moment in the sun without either having to lose some of them, because
we had sort of 2 openers and 2 closers at a certain point. So then when we were thinking about it, it was like, okay, you can't have these two closing songs. Also, there's quite a lot of epics in a way on the records. There's like a 10-minute track, there's some 7-minute, and those are like centerpieces. So if you stack them all on one record, you end up with this like just this weighty kind of indulgent thing. Whereas if you split them, it makes more sense.
It's going to be a head fuck putting a set list together.
It is, and remembering the lyrics as well. Jack just suggested the way over, maybe it's time to get a teleprompter.
I know LCD have one. I think loads of like reasonable people have teleprompters.
Yeah, I've prided myself on my on the memory of the lyrics, but I think that might be getting tripped up in the years to come.
And I think the last time we spoke was just before Citadel, and you said that there needed to be a violent change. Those are your words.
Yeah.
A violent change for the next Foals record to happen.
Yeah.
And how would you describe that change manifest?
Well, the change happened in certain ways, like in terms of the physical band. Like our bass player left the band, and so we had to kind of recalibrate. But in a way that was, it was challenging but also exciting, because it was like, right, we can't just rely on the old methods of the way that we've written. So going to Oxford and just bashing stuff out in a room wasn't going to work in the same way. So that kind of spurred us on to approach it differently. So we didn't approach it in the same way as before, which meant we had Edmund playing on bass. We shifted instruments around. I played a lot more bass, and I think the other big thing that accelerated the change was, which was Jack's idea really, that we wanted to go faster into a studio. So instead of spending months in a rehearsal room and then recapturing bits with a producer in a specific studio, that we would basically create a feedback loop between a recording studio and a writing room. So we were basically ping-ponging between two rooms for the whole process, and we didn't use a producer. So I think, without getting into how the record sounds different, I think when people hear it, they'll see that this is quite a big jump from what went down and from where we left stuff. So we feel like, I think we've achieved that violent change, basically.
Yeah. And obviously Walter left on amicable terms, so there's absolutely no story there. So don't ask them that for the next 2 years. But I've talked about before, like Interpol, for instance, said that when their bassist left, it sort of increased the chemistry within the band, and the bond became tighter. Did that feel like that happened here?
Yeah, I think so. I think Walter, if you were to sort of look at it as a family, which I mean, I've seen more of these guys than I've seen of my actual family by about 100 times more over the last 10 years. Walter was kind of like the dad / a much older brother that kind of sort of, kept us from sort of fighting with each other, and he was a lot of the time he was the one that would organise us to do kind of wholesome, nice activities and that kind of thing.
Makes it sound like he's taking us out of the bullpen.
Yeah, take us for walks.
How wholesome?
The pub.
Yeah,
the pub is as wholesome as it got, really, with him. But
so I think having him leave, it was kind of like, I feel like we've all made much more of an effort to kind of, I don't know, just like go out for lunch, doing like extracurricular stuff, so it's not always just in the studio. I think having all this, we took a lot of time off before we even started writing, and you kind of relearn how to just be at home and be mates and do, non-tour related or studio related things. And I guess that's really nice. But, in the last 12 years or so, we've spent so much time on tour that it's almost like relearning what it's like to, just hang around like with your mates, It's a weird one.
Be.
Yeah.
He was probably the nicest member of Foals. So without him, you're left with 4 sharp edges in a room. So those 4 sharp edges have to find a way to get on quite quickly, otherwise the whole thing turns into an unbearable nightmare.
And on stage, will you guys be sharing bass duties, or will it be?
No, we're gonna get somebody to fill in on tour, but it's not going to be like not anyone joining as like a new member as such. I think just because we've been together, like Jack's saying, for so long, it's like, I think having somebody, it's like having a stepmom when you don't want a new member. We just want it to be the 4 of us, and then. And in terms of the writing of the record, it wasn't a problem. No disrespect to Wal, but I mean, we cruised through it.
And then what would you say that having yourself behind production duties added to it, rather than having someone kind of with you guys on a leash?
I think it meant that we got to basically put forward an undiluted vision of what we wanted, and like the producers have always added something or taken something away inevitably, because that's what they do. And I think just 5 records in, it's like we've always had this slight itch that's like, oh, what would it sound like if we hadn't worked with a producer? And so this is the result. These 2 records are us working without a producer. And I think it meant that we got to indulge ideas that we wouldn't have, because a producer would have said, no, that's not a good idea, basically. And sometimes, the little voice in your head's like, oh, they would have been right. But actually, I think that we trust our instincts enough to to know when it's a good idea. So it was liberating basically. And the other thing is we had tons of time, and we were in the studio for a year, and no producer, no matter how much they'd love working with us, would probably want to be with us for that long. So this was a way of actually just like not hurrying anything at all. So because we're not billing the band ourselves for the, you know what I mean. So we had time basically. So.
Well, as a result, you've got 2 records with more atmosphere and, as you say, groove than ever before. There's a wide variety of sounds on there. So why did you choose Exits to launch with?
I think that we felt that it sets the tone for that first record, I think, in certain ways. It's obviously not every track is similar to it, but it sets a kind of a tone, and I think that it feels in some ways like the centerpiece of that album. And we just think it's fresh, basically. We just thought it was like a fresh take, and it's we like to come back with a song that kind of slightly curveballs as well. It's not necessarily exactly what people will expect, and I think lyrically it feels like pertinent basically to what's going on. So felt like it's at a good, feels like it will resonate culturally in a way that certain other songs that might be more introverted wouldn't.
Yeah. How literally should people take the lyrics to Exits?
I mean, it's symbolic, it depends what you mean by literal. It's like, it's not necessarily just about trying to get out of a room, but, I think it's definitely a very visual song, When it was being written, there was definitely I think we all had an image where, once some of the lyrics went in, it was like, oh, you can imagine living in this strange little underground world, slightly post-apocalyptic, trying to shield yourself from the news of all the bees dying and all the birds dying and everything that we're inundated with every day, and also not really finding a way out. And then I think the keyboard parts kind of mirror this slightly MC Escher weird staircase vibe. So it is. There's definitely things to be taken literally, but also I'd like it to work on different levels. It could be, you can definitely read it in different ways, I think.
So would you say that as a record, the album is largely consumed with this millennial nightmare we find ourselves in?
I think that it's definitely there on other tracks. Yeah, I think there's definitely a repeated theme.
And since the last record, we've lost bands like the Maccabees and Wild Beasts and a lot of the bands that kind of came up at the same time as you guys. Do you feel very much like the last band in town, or does that not play on your mind in any way?
It's hard to feel like that because we actually live round the corner from the Maccabees, so I'm doing a pub quiz with one of them tonight. So, I mean, it's sad that there's not many bands left from our sort of generation anymore, but we're pretty old, so I guess
maybe it's good.
Yeah, maybe it's good.
I mean, not that those bands specifically broke up, but I think we do feel like we're the last of, or one of the last of that, of that era, because we are. It's not like doesn't mean there's no intrinsic value to that, but the truth is just of that crop of bands that came through, there aren't many left. So I guess in certain ways it's a bit, if you wanted to look at it this way, it's kind of lonelier in a strange sense. You feel that you're kind of an outlier, but it's the way that culture's gone as well. It's clear that the cultural zeitgeist in many ways isn't around white dudes with guitars, and that's not a bad thing. So, but we're on a kind of individual creative mission. We're interested in making music with each other and pursuing what we do. So, at the same time as being aware of what's going on outside in the culture, we're just trying to make great music. And I think we'll probably feel it more backstage at festivals where you don't know, you're like, oh, all right, you're trying to make new friends. It's like the Steve Buscemi meme where he arrives with a skateboard or whatever.
Hello, fellow kid.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, I think we should be proud of the fact that we are still doing it and that we haven't got sick of each other or of it, or that we haven't dried out, and that we still feel that we're at our creative peak, so.
And what of the tour? When and where can we see you this year?
So yeah, there's a bunch of dates being announced today, basically. I don't know, we're going to be touring a lot. We're going to be playing around the UK and around Europe and America.
All over the place. Yeah, I don't know what's been announced or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, but you can check out all the dates, on the whatever,
I think one of the last sort of headline shows on the last tour was Wembley. Do you got a taste for arenas now?
Sure.
I don't. Everyone talks about arenas and stadiums and stuff, because we supported a few bands in stadiums and that sort of thing. I mean, yeah, stadiums can be great. A 200 capacity room can be great.
Yeah.
A 3,000 capacity. It's so dependent on the vibe of the people in that room.
Yeah. If people want to come and see, if that many people want to come and see you, it's like you'd be dumb to argue with it.
Mm.
It might not be the place that we ever envisaged the band being, but like, yeah, if we play big shows like that, it'll be cool.
And you've headlined Reading, surely Glastonbury's next? Question mark.
Watch this space.
On that note, Foals, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Man.